Welcome to Between Authors. I'm your host, author Adrian Lopez. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like and leave a comment below. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the notifications to not miss any of the amazing authors coming up. What is it that excites us as a reader? It's finding that author or book you may never have heard of, sort of the treasure hunt as a reader. My goal for this podcast is to bring to you authors or books that you may never have heard of or found before, but may have been that treasure you have been searching for all along. Today in episode 5, I have the best-selling award-winning author Mary L. Schmidt. We're going to go over what she's working on, her book that has been released, and some of the stuff she's going to be going over in the future. Welcome to the show, Mary.
Thank you. I'm really happy to be here today.
I'm happy to have you.
I haven't done a show in a while, and this is really nice to be able to come in and talk. And I have a subject matter that not everyone wants to talk about, and that is mental health and mental wellness. And it's very important that people do talk about that. COVID is rearing its ugly head again. So, it's not easy for people to be in their house and not go anywhere because they're scared they're going to get COVID. And I know in my small community of 2,600 people, we have COVID again. So that messes with the mental health and well-being of everyone in the family, relatives. So it's just something to talk about and be aware of.
Yes, it is. It is an important subject.
It's also important to me, when I was little growing up, I thought my family was normal. I didn't know anything else. I didn't have any nursing background. I didn't have all the knowledge and the experience that I've gained since. I didn't have any of that. And I thought, okay, so this is how all families are, but not all families are like mine. And the problem with my family was my mother. So my last book, my most recent book, is called Her Alibi by Mary L. Schmidt. And I wrote this book because my stepfather's story needed to be done. It needed to be written. It needed to be out there. What my mother did and all the different evil things that she did to us kids growing up, and especially me, to know that this is not normal. This is not the way it should be. I did not write this book for money or anything like that. I just knew that my stepfather's story needed to be out, needed to be told. And I'll give you a little bit of background on when I was a child growing up. My mother did atrocious things. From going out and checking floodwaters and then seeing all these little frog toads things, on the highway and driving over them, and then stopping and letting the kids play with them for a little bit, and then having them get back in the vehicle and then driving back and forth over them again, killing them. She took glee in that. That's not normal. No, it's not normal at all. That's just one incident of many, actually. She was very forthright, and she was the abuser of my father and my other siblings. Now, I need you to know that she did pass away in November of 2012, and I have waited so long to get this book out, and I got it written, got it out. It's 2 hours, short read, and you look at the psyche of everything that happened in childhood, and then you realize, yeah, my mother did shoot my stepfather. And I have 3 stepbrothers. I was speaking with Scott. It was like the day after, well, the day that it went out, I didn't do any big thing to say, okay, look, it's out. It just went live. And it hit #1 just like that. I was out of town and I was on my phone. It's like, oh, it's #1. And when did that happen? In less than 12 hours. So, and it's still in the top rankings for the
Yes.
genres that it's in. But when I was talking to my stepbrother Scott, and that was at we were eating. I can't remember, but it's been okay. It was on Thanksgiving. That's when we were talking. And one thing that I wanted Scott to know, and I wanted him to tell his siblings, was 2 days after the book came out. I'm a Christian, okay? I believe in Christianity. And I was asleep and I woke up and I didn't see anyone. I didn't hear anything, but I sensed that my stepfather was there and he validated, he was giving me a validation, or he liked having the validation of his life, that his life mattered. All lives matter.
Yeah.
That's the way it is. That's how I look at things. Every single life matters. And he told me, he didn't tell me, but it came into my head and then he was gone. So then when I was talking with Scott, he was telling me that Daryl had a book, but him and Alan didn't. And I said, well, I'm going to give you books. I'm going to give you all a book. And I gave his mom a book too. And then I told him what happened with Harold finally getting his story told. And I received the biggest bear hug ever for a long time. He knew that I was telling him the truth, and he knew that it wasn't for money. He knew that this was so Harold. His life mattered. He was cheated out of seeing his kids finish growing up, getting married. He was cheated out of seeing his grandchildren and great-grandchildren. He could have done all of that, but he was cheated out of it, and it was wrong. And so I wrote the book. There are I had to write the book with my own personal harrowing memories and everything in my childhood. And then realizing that my mother had a psychosis problem, I realized that she was untreated her entire life. And that is a big thing with mental health. You need to be treated. And oftentimes, and she never was, but oftentimes, especially with veterans who come back and say they're the only one that lived in their regiment, something bad happened. Well, they have survivor guilt and things like that. And oftentimes, not using just veterans, but anybody who's on medicine for bipolar disease, which I believe my mother had, and schizophrenia, which I believe my mother had, from everything that when I look back. Well, when people are better, they think, okay, I'm better. I don't need the medicine. They stop. And then it ends up coming back down, and it's really not a good thing. It's just a cycle, a vicious cycle, and it's not healthy for anyone like that.
Yep.
And so siblings or parents or whoever of the person who has these struggles in life, they need support. They need a lot of support. And They need to be able to stay on their medicine, and if they need somebody that's helping to remind them or just taking them out and, getting them out of the house so they can just be out in the sunshine and take them for a drive somewhere. Things like that are so nice because that's really helping that person.
Yep.
And, there gets to be a point for some where they live on Skid Row or wherever, in a tent or not, in all elements, and they're homeless.
Yep.
And they can't have medicine, and they're going to show those signs of not being on medicine, which is an unfortunate thing too. So that's my thoughts on that little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I really am grateful for you to be able to come on and speak about this. I know you have written the book about it, but I know it's still and will probably always be something very difficult to talk about and discuss. And I do appreciate you coming on and discussing it.
It's important. Writing a book about your life is like opening the door, here, let's open every door and welcoming all these strangers in.
Yep.
That's essentially what it is. And I did that, not only with this book, but with two others. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and I've mentioned this on previous shows, but I think it's at those points for authors when you do that, when you open yourself up that way, and it just comes across so genuine to the reader, and they can feel everything with you because it's not manufactured. It's you basically bearing your soul and saying, "Look, this is my experiences. This is what I feel," and the reader's definitely going to always feel that. Mental health is similar to some of the other things I've discussed previously on the show. Is like a lot of times it's really only a word to a lot of people until they have experienced it or know somebody who's experienced it. And there's so many people that just suffer in silence with all of these things, right? Whether, my journey or my books are about the loss of my daughter during our pregnancy and fertility struggles. A lot of people suffer in silence with that. They don't talk about that. Same thing with mental health. It's not discussed. I mean, even if it's known within the family, they don't discuss it outside. They don't ask for support or anything, and it's just something always quietly suffering alone with it. And it needs to get out there. People need to understand how important these messages are, and you know how many there are out there in the world. I mean, it's just not really realized how many cases there truly are.
it's prevalent. It's
Yeah.
prevalent worldwide. But when you do open yourself up, you put all your memories and nightmares and everything comes out. And for me, I wasn't out to seek pity or anything like that. That wasn't the case. I wanted Harold to be known, to matter. I wanted
Hmm.
his life to matter because it was the right thing to do. That's why I did that. But there are many, many things when I was young that you're not going to when you read it, it's not going to be rose colored glasses. It's going to be really, it's going to be a lot of things that when you start adding them up, you realize just how sick that person was her entire life. And when you talk about your child, I've lost two children. Okay. My youngest died at age 5 with cancer. My oldest died in utero inside me. And so they had to initiate the birthing process, is what I will call it. And essentially, my oldest was born straight to heaven because I know he had a soul. So I know he went to heaven. But my mother was the one who decided that she would go and get my baby, from the hospital or the coroner Otherwise, they were going to incinerate him. And I don't think that was true, but that's what she told me when I'm in a frame of mind where I'm not wanting to hear this. But yes, I do want you to get him. So she goes and she gets Shane. And then she already dug a hole in the cemetery, okay? She dug one. She already did that. And she had another sister take me out to the cemetery. And she had my son in her hand. And she unwrapped his umbilical cord from around his left arm twice and his neck twice. And she made me look at how he was tangled up and how he had died. And then she wrapped the cord back around the neck twice and his left arm twice. Didn't even put him, he was naked. He didn't even have a little blanket. And she put him in a shoebox and put him in the ground. That's cruel.
Yes.
I mean, I'm emotional about thinking about that because of how cruel it was, what she did to me. That's wrong.
Yes.
I will tell you that a lot of people have read this book in my local area because they wanted to know what all my mother did they wanted to know what some of her problems were. And then I've had many people say, well, that answers a lot of questions because of how her behavior was and all of that. So, and person's behavior, especially a parent's behavior, psychotically, the psyche, if you're messing with your children, and she did that with all of her children, but me especially, because I looked like my father, and that was a no-no for her.
Yeah.
That's what she did, and it's wrong, and it's not easy to get over. Even with my own losses, I have depression. I take antidepressants. That helps me. I'm able to deal. If I wasn't on an antidepressant, I probably don't think I would be here. Because I don't see that. But
I mean, it's a, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
So I take that and then I get anxious sometimes. So I have some anti-anxiety medicine to help with that. And between the two, I live a functional, healthy life. True, I'm a nurse. True, it's not bipolar. It's not schizophrenia, which is in my family. It's hereditary. But my depression with my losses and my anxiety, they're covered. And I'm fine. And my doctors love that. I'm talking about all of my doctors. I have a lot of specialists out in Denver. And they know, they see me and they see me doing well. So I say, yes, take your antidepressant or your anti-anxiety medication. And if you have more serious issues such as schizophrenia or bipolar disease, and take those medicines too, because it's really, really important for your own health and the health of those around you.
Absolutely.
It's
a good. Oh, sorry.
My mother did something in 1981 that she had never done in the past. She came to my home. It was already dark out. I had no clue why she was there. First time ever and last time to that home. And she came in, she said she wanted to talk to me. So I thought, okay, so I sat her down and we start talking and she's joking about different things. And then all of a sudden she says, do you think Harold would commit suicide? And I'm like, what? Why would he? He knows he wouldn't do that. He was helped. He worked for the county and he helped with the police department and everything. And he would not do that. And if he did do that, he would know how to do it in the head. He knows. He would know. Well, so she was asking me a few more questions about that, and then she stayed for another like 3 hours and left. Little did I know I was her alibi. She used me as her alibi. As the story goes, she found my stepfather with a wound, not in the chest, but in the abdomen. Well, that's already a big, that's already a flag because he knew enough. He would never have done that. Anybody who's serious on taking their life, they're going to shoot the head. Harold didn't. My mother did. I know she did. And I know I was used as her alibi. And I'm still working through the fact that that she used me that way. That's a process. And the evil, all the evil that was done is I'm okay now. But you can see how it goes on and on and on.
Yeah.
You know,
It never fully goes away.
my younger siblings, they basically had no clue about most of what was happening. They didn't even know that she was mentally ill. My parents divorced after 23 years of marriage, and I lived with my father. I stayed with my father. I was a teenager. I stayed with him until I was forced to then move because she made him sell the house, and then his apartment was too small. And so, anyway, eventually I was forced to move with her when I didn't want to. So, there you have in this book, you had the glory of Harold thanking me for putting his story out. However, he did that. I just knew his presence was there. I don't see ghosts. I don't, none of that. Okay. But I just sensed it. It wasn't verbalized to me. I sensed it. And that was all I needed. That was all I needed because he did that and that made the difference. That made it complete. That made it, that gave it closure. Where there was no closure, what he did, what he did with his soul and everything, the message gave closure for the first time since 1981. For the very first time. And I was able to pass that on to my brother Scott, and he gave me the biggest bear hug, and he passed that on to others. And that's the whole reason for this story. That's the whole reason. Everything in it is true. Everything. I know that most every child that my mother had became estranged from her, and it was just, it didn't have anything to do with her because of all of her craziness. So, anyways, everything's realistic, and untreated mental illness is a bad thing. And I mean, it's just really bad. And I can't explain all the different traumas that can happen to a child when they are subjected to this day in and day out. It's nuts. But anyway, so I wrote it's a pretty starkly vivid novel, short story. It is. And I left a lot out, but anything that she could, I'll give you another example of something that she did to mess with us. My older brother is 7 years older than me, and he had gone to school with a woman in Lyons, Kansas, because that's where we lived. And the woman ended up having a accident, and it was on a country road. She had an accident, and she died. But that's not how my mother put the story out. She put it out that Barb had that she was mangled, that her arms were all twisted up in the steering wheel, and that's not possible. That's not possible. Um, but I didn't know that at the time. I didn't think about it at the time. I'm believing this. I'm a kid. I'm believing it. I know my brother Joe didn't like hearing that, and he doesn't like hearing or talking about anything that happened in the past. He prefers for moving forward and going on with happier things, current things, and I can see his point entirely.
Yeah.
It was wrong for her to do that. It's just things like that. Or she would say, okay, so she had a friend that was driving, and the friend had an accident, and the accident took her head off. No, it didn't. There was nothing like that in the newspapers. There's nothing. She just had an accident, and she went through the windshield, hit her head. And oftentimes when that happens, you die because, you break your neck with that. So, but her head was not chopped off, but that's how my mother would say it. And she would do this over and over and over. That was the thing. She would take something and she would do it repetitiously until it was ingrained into our brains and nothing else was. What do you do?
Yeah.
As a kid? I know I'm kind of going over time, so.
No, don't even worry. Honestly, I mean, again, I haven't had the chance to read the book yet. I did read a lot of the reviews and stuff that people mentioned, and there is a lot of mention of not only how detailed and how great you wrote this book, again coming from your heart and soul, but about a lot of the scenes that did demonstrate her psychotic tendencies that she did have, like you said, that were untreated, that were, as you look back and speak about them, definitely textbook incidents that would describe that. But like you said, she was never, treated, never even diagnosed with that. And you mentioned earlier, I know there is 4 mental health categories. There's mood disorders, which is basically depression and the form of bipolar, anxiety disorders, personality disorders, and then the psychotic, which is schizophrenia and that side of it. And it's just too many cases that go undiagnosed or just go ignored. And, people just say, oh, that person is just odd, or they're just strange. That's just the way they are. But as you mentioned, how she did that to you guys, I mean, one of the biggest things for mental health issues later on in life is trauma early on. And when you're getting that day in, day out, and consistently, that is something that leads to that, besides, as you said, genetics and chemical imbalances in general. And that's why it is so important to get diagnosed, be treated, take the medication to stay there. It's very important for this to be discussed and looked at.
Yes, it is. Even in her 80s, she was still doing that.
Yeah.
She was still doing that. My mother, I could not let my mother know when I was getting married. Couldn't let her know any of that. Because I know that she would have gone into the church and caused a scene. So I couldn't let my father know so that he could take me down the aisle, and he understood that. I had a neighbor who was like a grandfather to my children. He walked me down the aisle. Well, he ended up getting into really, really deep depression. Years and years later, he did. And he went outside his home, which was next door to her, and he shot himself in the head. My mother goes and she grabs a chair and she takes it through the hallway and up to the door, and she parks herself at the door between the inner door and the screen door, and she's watching everything and she's delighting and telling me what's going on, and I'm thinking, I don't need to be hearing this. And then she said, I sure hope they don't think I did it. Who says that?
Yeah.
Why would anybody think she did it? She was known as the Black Widow. True. My father lived. My stepdad, George, he was the coolest stepdad ever. And he unfortunately had a heart attack, massive coronary. And so that marriage ended sooner than she wanted. Then my stepdad, who ended up being shot, she married him 3 times. It was marry, divorce, marry, divorce, marry, and die. Because my mother was also about money, all money. And so she had my little brother with Down syndrome, heart defects, and all of that. She wanted the Medicaid to pay for it, so she divorced, but they still live together, which is wrong. That's just a blatant misuse of everything. But my point is, it never stopped until she died. When she was dying in the hospital, well, before that, one time she asked me, why do you not like me? And I said, well, I try to keep my enemies close, or I keep my friends close and my enemies closer, because I never know what you're going to do. She didn't like that, but it's true. I had to do that.
Yeah.
So I kept her close, but not so close. I mean, I kept her stayed away. And when she lay dying, after she had a hemorrhagic stroke on one side of her head, and when she fell out of the chair, she hit her other side on a wall, so she had a brain bleed on both sides. I already knew that her maximum was 2 weeks to live. I knew that. So I drove all the way to Wichita, because I felt like I need to do my duty. And with her nurse in the room, at the foot in the bed, and my mother was there, and she heard everything I said, and I spoke directly to her. And I said, I'm here, and I'm here to do my duty as your daughter and as a nurse. And you will have morphine for pain. You'll have Ativan for when you get anxious, and morphine for air hunger too. I said, and this is all being done, and now we're done. And I left. I did my duty as a daughter and a nurse, yet she never did her duty as a mother.
Yeah.
So anyways, so the book is Her Alibi, and it's all true, by Mary L. Schmidt. It's easy to find. You can go to whenangelsfly.net, and there's drop-down menus with all the different memoirs and things listed. So if anybody's interested, it is whenangelsfly.net, and you can find all the books in the drop-down.
Yeah, I will definitely, in the description below, Mary, I will have all your links for everybody to be able to find for you. So everything will be down below for them as well.
Thank you.
Again, I thank you for coming on and talking about this and discussing this. I did usually have a couple of questions I asked for the book, generally for the guests.
Go for it.
So, usually I ask what your favorite scene is. Don't know if you would have one generally in this book, but I do also ask, what was the hardest scene maybe to write, to relive at the moment? So let's focus on what was the hardest scene for you rather than what was the favorite scene in the book.
I have a favorite scene that I
Okay.
didn't write about, but it's in a picture because I put pictures in the book.
Okay.
And it was where I'm trying to bring my siblings in closer to me for a hug and a picture because my mother never gave hugs or kisses. But I'm doing this in a picture. So I really like that part. The hardest part would be when the way she buried Shane and the way she did things when my youngest passed away after having a battle with cancer. They are both at the same level, which would be
Yeah.
way above 10.
Yeah.
They were difficult.
And I'm sorry for your loss on both of those and what you had to struggle through and deal with your mother on that side. Again, I really do thank you for coming on and discussing this and talking about the book in general. But I do want to mention that you do have other stuff that you do as well for the viewers out there that I do want to at least bring up so people are aware of it. And you do a service where you do book covers and book cover animation. You actually animated one of my covers for me as well, and I loved them. They all came out amazing. So why don't you just go over a little bit about that as well?
I do, and I do it at a cheap price because not every author, especially indie authors, they don't always have a budget for it. And
Very
so,
true.
because art wise, I'm a painter and everything else, so I like doing that. So I do. I animate book covers, and as far as all of my books, I designed all of my covers. That's me. I know how to do that. Um, and then I will take covers, the front covers of some books, and I will animate them in different ways. I do it because I said not every author has a budget to work with. So I only charge $10, and I say, "Oh, you'll get back 7 or 5 to 7 versions," and usually it's more than that. So I think that's pretty cheap.
Yeah, I mean you do, and you do a great job. I mean everyone that you sent me, and you did send me more than that. I think you sent me maybe 10 or 12, but everyone was just it was a great job on. I loved them. And
Thank you.
that's on your the same website as well, correct?
They can contact me. There's a contact me
Okay.
link, and they can write me and tell me that they're interested, and then I can give them the details of what would be involved.
Okay. And I know you have a bunch of other books that you've done as well. Why don't you discuss a little bit about maybe what you're working on or what you have coming up?
Coming up, this isn't going to sound very romantic, but it is. I'm doing a Christmas and Evergreen, a 3-book series, romance series. And it starts off with a woman who, in the path of one 15-minute time span, finds out that her husband is not only an assassin, but that she is next on his hit list.
That sounds great. When do you plan on releasing the first one of that?
I'm hoping for December this year.
Okay. Okay. Perfect. Is there anything else you want to leave the viewers with in general that you would like to discuss or go over?
I think that everyone needs to be on their comfort level and, if possible, talk about things that are going on that's bothering them, like with a friend, or, "Hey, Alexa, I don't know." That's, somebody, have somebody that you trust.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have the trust in a person, then you're left with no one. And that's going to eat you up inside. And it's going to even cause ulcers and stomach ulcers and all that. It's going to cause blood pressure to go up. So mental health and mental wellness and body wellness is all together. It's all connected.
Yeah. So for those that have watched this episode and have enjoyed it, please leave a like, leave a comment for either Mary or I, so we can see if you have any questions or anything you would like to know more about. Please don't forget to subscribe and hit the notifications for all the authors that are going to be coming up to go over their stories. And again, I just want to thank you, Mary, for coming on, for discussing not only your book, but just the difficult situations and experiences you had. And, I'm very happy to know you because you have went through a lot of trauma, not only within your family, yourself, and as you mentioned, your neighbors and surrounding. And, you've come out on the better side of it, right? And not a lot of people do. And I'm very proud of you for that. Just like you said, your doctors are, that you are able to do everything you do, come on here and talk about it and discuss it for others that don't like to talk about it and bring it up.
But what happens when you have somebody come on and you talk about it? They're able to run things through their head and they're able to figure out some of that on their own. But unfortunately, here I am and I'm left with PTSD and CPST. So, for life.
Yeah.
Because I never know when an ugly memory is going to rear its head. Unfortunately.
Yeah.
And so when that happens, I have to get out of that headspace and go back to a better headspace. And I have ways to do that, which is I talk to Jesus.
Yeah.
And I get out of that bad headspace.
Yeah.
I give it to him, and then I'm okay.
Yeah. Like I said, the main message is really, if you feel that you or somebody is suffering, even if you think it's a mild case, check it out. Just
Yes.
go in, just talk with somebody, check it out. You need to find that, like you say, that space that brings you the calm, whether it's going out in nature, whether maybe it's reading, maybe it's praying, whatever that is. Find that for you. Everybody needs that moment of zen, a moment of relaxation to be able to get away. But definitely discuss it. Find somebody to talk about that you can share these with. Don't hold it in. None of this stuff, no matter what it is, it's not worth holding it in and trying to fight the battle alone.
No. That's the big thing, is they think that they're alone, and they're not.
Yeah.
There's somebody somewhere that they can reach out, even if it's an 800 number to a stranger, they can reach out to somebody.
Yeah.
Help is out there.
Yes. And then I will probably leave below too on the video, probably in the description as well. I'll try to leave some numbers for helplines and different foundations and stuff that you can reach out to and talk to. Again, thank you for coming on, Mary. I truly do appreciate this.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
No problem. And thank you, viewers, for watching as well. Goodbye.
Bye.